Okay, we're going to look at the first part of Jonah chapter 2, and we'll lead up to it by looking at Masoretic text chapter 2 verse 1, English 1:17. So throughout chapter 2 we're going to be one verse off the English in our Masoretic text. Shouldn't be too hard to figure that out. So chapter 2 verse 1 Masoretic text 1:17 English. We've already been through that, but I'm going to go through it quickly just so that we have some context. Vayaman Adonai Dag Gadol, and the Lord appointed a great fish, Livloa et Yonah, to swallow Jonah. Vayahi Yonah b'ma'e hadag, and Jonah was in the stomach of the fish, Shilosha Yamim Ushilosha Leilot, 3 days and 3 nights. Now we'll come on to verse 2 of the Masoretic text, verse 1, chapter 2 in the English, and we'll go ahead and read that as a short verse. Vayitpalel Yonah el Adonai Elohav Mima'e Hadaga. This is pretty straightforward. Vayitpalel, here is our hithpael of the root palal, and the hithpael, it's a imperfect because of our yod prefix. We've got a vav consecutive. We can tell that because of our standard markers for vav consecutive. Vav with the patak, doubled prefix letter. Vayitpalel, and Jonah prayed to the Lord, Elohav, his God. There's a 3ms pronominal suffix on Elohim. Mima'e, the singular is me'eh, but it never appears in the singular. It's always in the plural construct, which is me'eh. And so it's how we see it here. So from the stomach of, and then we have hadaga. For some reason we have a feminine here. We have the belly of the feminine fish, but up here in the first verse we have in the belly of, or in the stomach of, whatever, hadag, masculine. And so these are clearly parallel, and for some reason we have a feminine and a masculine version of the same word. This is just one of those interesting features of Hebrew. So verse 2 here, and Jonah prayed to the Lord, his God, from the stomach of the fish, and he said, this is the beginning, Vayomer is the beginning of the next verse, and so let's take a look at what he said. Vayomer, karati mitzarali el Adonai, vaya'aneni, mebeten sheol, shiva'ati, shamata koli. The Masoretic text breaks this up poetically. We call these steeks, and so we have steek 1 and steek 2, and these are parallel. So they're expressing a similar idea or related idea in two different ways. And so we have karati mitzarali el Adonai vaya'aneni. Karati, I called. This is a 3 aleph verb, but it's pretty clear that it is a kal perfect first common singular. And so we have I called mitzara, from, and sarah means distress, literally from distress to me, and we would just translate that my distress. I called in my distress, or from my distress, El Adonai, to the Lord, Vaya'aneni. This is a vav consecutive. We have a doubled prefix. This is a one guttural. The ayin here is in the one spot, And this is also a 3 which we haven't covered yet. And so the root here is ana, and for these verbs with a hey in the third root spot, the hey often drops off, and it does for vav consecutives. We do recognize the connecting vowel here is a sere, and then we see this pronominal suffix. So ana is to answer, and we have, it's a 3ms. There's no imperfect suffix here, so it's just a 3ms with the yod prefix, and he answered me. And so this first stich here is, I called from my distress, or from distress to me, to the Lord, and he answered me. The second stich then is a related thought, Mabeten Sheol Shivati. And so we have from the beten, from the womb or from the belly, Sheol of Sheol. We might translate that from the depths of Sheol, literally from the belly of Sheol. Shivati. The root is a type of verb we haven't covered yet, we will soon, which is a 2-vav root. In the PL stem, though, it looks pretty normal because the R2 letter vav doubles, and we have our typical PL pointing for a PL perfect. So we have a PL perfect, the T ending, 1CS, of this root, which does not appear in the CAL anyway, it only appears in the PL. And so we have, from the belly of Sheol, I cried out. That's what this root means in the PL. I cried out. We have Shemata, which is a Cal perfect 2ms, referring now to the Lord. You heard Koli. Shema, of course, is to hear or to obey, to listen to. You heard Koli, my voice. So we have the two stichs are related. I called in my distress to the Lord, and he answered me. From the belly of Sheol I cried out, you heard my voice. So notice how those two are giving parallel and related thoughts. Let's look at verse 4 now. Jonah chapter 2, verse 4, and 2:3 in the English versions. Vatashlikeni mitzula bilavav yamim, v'nahar yesovaveni, kol mishpareka, v'galeka alai avaru. Okay, again we have the Masoretic text giving us two stichs here, stick 1 and 2. These are a little bit arbitrary. This is the way that the Masoretes decided to break this out. Others might do it a little bit differently. This is a little more complex because we have some kind of parallelism even inside the first of these stichs. So let's take a look at this. We have Vatashlikeni, pretty clearly a hiphil here. We have this nice Hirik Yod theme vowel, and we have our prefix tav with the patak underneath it. That's pretty characteristically hiphil. The vav with the patak tells us it is a vav consecutive, and the doubled tav here is a dagesh forte because it comes after a full vowel. So we have a hiphil, imperfect, vav consecutive, and our root is shalach, which is in the hiphil to throw, to hurl, to cast. And we have our connecting vowel and a standard 1CS pronominal suffix here. The tav could be either 2ms or 3fs. Pretty clearly it is 2ms because Jonah is talking to the Lord. So you cast me, you threw me, mitsula. This is the word for the deeps or the depths or just depths, or singular deep or depth. Literally, you cast me, and the verb itself we might be able to add into depending on the context. You cast me into literally depth, but we would probably add a definite article even though there is no definite article here. we would probably say the depths, or simply into the deep. So you cast me into the deep. Then we have belevav, into or in, literally in, but we would probably say into, so into the heart of the seas. So you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas. We see a parallelism here in this first phrase, and then it continues on, v'nahar yisovaveni. Nahar literally is river or stream, and probably more like stream here. If you're in the middle of the ocean, however, I think we're probably going to be talking about a stream in the ocean, which would be instead a current. The root here is savav. This is what we call a geminate verb, a double ion, where the last two letters are the same. And this is not one of our common stems. It's called the poel stem. We'll talk about that in the very last chapter that we get to. Savav means to surround. It has the characteristic pl prefix, and it has the connecting vowel and a 1cs pronominal suffix. It just means to surround. So the current surrounded me. So let's look at Steek 1 here according to how they've got it split up. And you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the current surrounded me. Literally, a current surrounded me. Now the second part here, kol mishbareka, this would be all, and we have mishbar. It comes from our root shavar, which means to break, and literally this is a breaker. A breaker in the ocean, meaning a wave. So mishbareka is a 2ms pronominal suffix. All your waves, or breakers. The yod here between the noun and the pronominal suffix tells us it's plural. All your breakers. Ugaleka. Gal is a heap. But of course in the water, a heap would just equal a wave. And so all your breakers and your waves, it's plural because we have that yod again between the noun and the pronominal suffix. Alai avaru. Normally we would see this as avaru. This would be a vocal schwa. But because it's at the end of the verse, it's in pausal form, and so we have avaru. Other than that, it is a typical Cal perfect. And so we have over me, they have passed over. We would probably say they have passed over me. So all your breakers and your waves have passed over upon me, or just have passed over me. So let's look at the two steeks together. And you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and a current, or we might say the current, and a current surrounded me. All your breakers and your waves have passed over me. And I'm adding the have here as sort of that English perfective idea. I have done something. All your breakers and your waves have passed over me. Okay, so that is Jonah chapter 2, verses 2, 3, and 4 in the Masoretic text, or 1, 2, and 3 in the English.